So I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting this In Conversation with Georgia Brown. You've been in the job for about 18 months now as Director of European Originals at Amazon Studios. But we're really, really delighted because I feel like this is kind of like your first sort of proper debut at the Edinburgh Festival with your team. You've got a bit more infrastructure now, and you're really here to tell us a bit about what your vision is for your patch, who's in your team, and most importantly, lots of practical information for all you guys here for how to sort of get to Georgia and speak to her team. Now, I'm sure many of you will have already been doing this in other sessions. Do go to the app if you've got any particular questions that you want to ask Georgia. We'll try and get as many of them in at the end of the session, but do go through and put some questions in now. But we're going to start at the beginning, and we're going to start with the basics, Amazon 101. So tell us, Georgia, where does Prime Video fit into the whole kind of Amazon structure?
So going back a step, and I have to do this in all my panels, Prime is what we want to be the best value membership program in the world. So Prime Video is a huge part of that, and it's really important to the business. So Prime Video is almost the portal. It's the way that you're accessing the content. So if you go onto Prime Video, you can see originals that I'm making, the US team are making. You can access our TVOD, our bundle-free channels. There's lots of different bits within that service that you can access content through. And then studios are the people that are kind of physically commissioning and producing that content to go through Prime Video on the portal. So we're kind of two separate parts of the same business.
And I mean, the other question that you probably get quite a lot as well is a little bit of the confusion about what the link is between the video and the retail as well.
All the
because
time.
Obviously, I mean, think somebody actually asked us, I'm coming along to this session, do I have to try and make a product that sells nappies to get commissioned by Amazon? I was like, I don't think so, but maybe you just want to just explain that.
We get it all the time. It was funny when I took this job, because I was pregnant when I started, and even my mum went, it's brilliant, you're going to get loads of Pampers. I was like, that's just not how it works. We're very separate bits of the business. So, the way the company's best set up is there's obviously the retail business with shipping and e-commerce, there's music, there's AWS, there's studios and video, and we're all run incredibly independently, and we're all kind of linked through this very cohesive set of, I suppose, leadership principles and values that Jeff set out for the company. So I think the great thing about that is we can access the leverage and leverage the scale of the company, but actually act very independently. So, again, when I started, lots of the pitches we had in were, cooking shows where we could then do groceries and that's just not appealing to us. We absolutely will leverage the business in this kind of 360 approach when we need to. If there's a great show out there that we think could link into fashion and that would be great for the customers, we do it. But that's definitely not something that we're out there looking for on the commissioning slate.
And just to give us a kind of a launching off point, what's your overview for your role at Amazon? What's your vision for you and your team?
I think there's a couple of things. As you said, we started up a couple of years ago, and I was the first non-US hire for studios. So prior to that, everything was run out of Los Angeles. And then when we went global in 2016, really we had a different conversation with our audience at that point. And it was very clear that what they wanted were local originals in local language. They love our US originals. They travel incredibly well around the globe, but they really wanted to see something that was a bit more impassioned to their life and something that resonated well with them. So they brought me on board to set up the studios, and there's a couple of phases to that. So phase one is obviously physically setting it up, and that's an awful lot of work. So we've been busy recruiting, as lots of you know, and getting the infrastructure of the team right. And that's not just the creative team, and we'll come on to talk about them in a bit, but that's everything from production, post-production, finance, business affairs, legal, because if we're truly going to be local, we can't just be operating creatively locally. We have to make sure our deals adhere to local laws, local regulation. So that's really important to us. So that kind of phase one of setting up the team is very much in motion, and we're nearly there, I'm pleased to say. And then I suppose phase two of that is working out what our customers actually want. What do the audience want? And therefore, what do we want you guys to start pitching us, which I know is forever the challenge. And it's been a really fantastic journey trying to figure that out. Jen Salke, when she started, summed it up really well, which was we're going to be the studio that creatives want to call home. We're going to be the place they want to come back to. And really what that means is we have to be focused on two people in the world. Firstly, it's our audience, and we have to be completely obsessed with them. What do they want to watch? What aren't they getting on television? What voices do they need to see? And then it's also the producers. You know, what stories have they been itching to tell for years and years, but there just hasn't quite been the right home or the right slot or the money to back up that idea. And she very much is leading our studio creatively. Everything we do starts with the creative and works backwards from that. So people are often shocked. I know we've spoken about this when they come into the studio and pitch ideas, and we're never the people that will say, can you make it for this amount of money and deliver in Q4 19? That's just not the way we operate. A show takes as long as a show takes to develop.
I think that'll come as a relief to many people.
You know, and I guess that will come on to, again, our different model and how we're unique, but we don't have the idea of slots that we have to work to. So we can be quite fluid in the creative process, which allows ideas to really come to life in a way that maybe they wouldn't under different pressures.
Well, speaking of coming to life, I think we've got a little bit of content now in terms of just some of the kind of highlights of what you guys have been doing.
Absolutely, and some of these shows have never been seen before. They're some of our new European slates, so I hope you like them. Thank you.
So we've been hearing a lot at the sessions today about where new disruptors are fitting in with the domestic ecosystem. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit about where you see yourselves kind of slotting in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, in every territory we're in, and we'll focus on the UK today, but every territory that we go into, we're very conscious of the current ecosystem, of the broadcasters. And, you know, the different models of working with Amazon means that we work very closely with lots of the local broadcasters in each territory, including the UK. So here in the UK, we really see ourselves as very complementary to the market, as additive. We're definitely not here to tread on the broadcasters' toes. I think, as every producer in the room will say, there are more than enough great ideas to go around. And I think the new players coming into the market is only a positive thing. You know, it's bringing new investment, gives customers more choice, and it gives producers another window to sell their content. So I think it's all positive. And we've had such a great time in the UK working with the broadcasters.
And you've done some interesting co-productions.
Yeah, some great stuff. You know, it's our journey really. Amazon started licensing, and that tends to be how each territory starts up. You begin on the licensing side. Then we moved into co-production, and we've just done some incredible shows. A Very English Scandal, The Informer, which was just a pleasure to work on. We're working with the BBC at the moment on Small Axe, which we've talked a bit about, which is a US co-production we're doing. And what's fantastic about the co-production side of the business is it enables to support talent, support the broadcasters where maybe they don't have the financing or need the scale of the global windows to help with those shows. But it also means we can take our customers maximum choice. And that's really what Amazon is all about. You know, we don't obsess too much about competition. If you went onto Fire TV tomorrow, you'd see Netflix, you'd see BBC iPlayer. That's great for us. We want audiences to be able to access this incredible content, whether that's ours or anybody else's.
And in terms of your, I suppose, your competitors, the Netflix and like, how would you say you differentiate from them? What's different about what you're offering?
I think our setup on our model is incredibly different for a start. You know, at Amazon, it's not just an SVOD service. And if you're looking at video alone, it's so much more than that. We have TVOD, we have channels, we have Prime Video Direct. But as a business, we offer so much more. As I said earlier, a creative can now come to us with just a topic or a genre or an idea that they're not quite sure what it is yet. And we can sit there and have that discussion. Is this TV? Is it a movie? Actually, is it a clothing line? Is it that you have to go off and do a soundtrack? I don't know. There's so many different ways that you can work within the Amazon business that's not just this kind of SVOD streaming route. I think that offers just a variety of riches for creators coming to work with us.
So you're not offering people a kind of, a single model. It's a very bespoke sort of deal in terms of what their different needs are.
Absolutely, and that comes back to kind of our mission, I suppose, which Jen set out, which is we're not the service that's going to come to the market with hundreds of new commissions every month. We're going to be so bespoke and we're going to be so focused in our offering. We're not doing the volume game. We're very much about fewer, bigger, better. And again, that allows us to give ideas a room to breathe and to develop into what they need to be without having to force them into certain slots or genres or timelines to be beholden to a business.
And speaking of the numbers games, where do you stand on viewing figures and audience figures? We've had some chat today about how Netflix have started to release their viewing figures. Would you do the same? Is that how you would judge a show's success? Or, and maybe tell us a wee bit about who is your Prime viewer, who is the Amazon Prime viewer?
So starting with the ratings, at Amazon, for us, the kind of overnight model, just because that's not our model, we see that as very short-term results, and we're really in the long-term game. So what that doesn't tell us is whether people are engaging. So when we look at a show, and honestly, every show is different, they all have to do different things for us, but there's a few buckets that we look at. The first, obviously, is, are people signing up to watch this show? We are a subscription service. We want to know that that show has made an impact in territories. And it's different in each territory. You know, if you look at something like Spain and Italy and what the content needs to do there, it's very different to somewhere like the UK and Germany, where we're very established. We've been here for a while. So one thing is absolutely, are people signing up to watch it? But even that doesn't tell you if people absolutely loved a show. And we're very much in the business of making shows people love, because that guarantees us they're going to stick with our service and they'll keep coming back.
Loyalty.
Exactly. And really the only way that you can judge that is, are people watching the show in its entirety? You know, if someone comes in and watches 2 episodes of a 10-part series and never comes back, that tells me there was something wrong with that show. If people are coming in and sticking with it, we've already seen this trend with something like Amazel, when that completion rate is so high. Not only do they get to the end of it and shout about it, tweet about it, Instagram, tell their friends, their hairdressers, their taxi driver, you've got to watch this show, but they come back for the season 2, and that's really important to our business, that people keep coming back. Because actually what we do know is Prime Video is one of the key drivers of people re-signing up to Amazon. You know, that's such an important part of the business. If they have a great experience with us in video, they will sign up again. So the engagement and whether our customers absolutely adore something is a much bigger win for us than necessarily the number of people coming.
And like you say, that gives a show time to breathe and develop. And sometimes it does take a wee bit longer for a show to sort of get off the ground, and that word of mouth and the social media. Now, we're going to move on to probably the bit which is going to be of most interest to people in the room, which is tell us about your team. Walk us through the structure of your team and some of the practical things. Who are the key people? Who do people pitch to? And what are their email addresses? Because that's always the most useful thing, isn't it?
So my team, I was saying this when we were planning this session, I used to come to Edinburgh every year, and it used to really drive me crazy because everyone would go, come and talk to us. And then they'd leave. So my poor team today, in the UK, we've hired Lydia Hampson, who runs Scripted, here she is, and co-production, and we have Dan Grabiner, and here are their email addresses. We're very easy to get hold of, so note them down.
We'll keep them up on the screen for a while so everybody can get them. Everyone's taking their phones out to take a picture.
Take your phones out, take a photo. So Lydia and Dan joined us this year, and we were really, really delighted they did, because another thing that's been really fascinating while setting the studio up is thinking of the different breeds of people that we want to bring in to do this job, because of course that will ultimately impact the creative and what we're doing. So Lydia and Dan, hugely experienced, bring a really fresh and distinctive view of the market and how to develop for our audience. I know lots of you in the room have had a chance to meet them. They're fantastic. They're here this week, so by all means grab them. If you want to pitch a show in the UK, these are the guys to speak to. And what I will say is, when you're sending us ideas, you can imagine we get a ton of ideas, and we're still a tiny team. This is it for the UK. So please be super clear in that email. You know, if you have creative, attach it. If you can give us a log line, even better. If you can tell us any talent, eps and durations, you know, lots of people just send us a script and say, here's a script, fancy reading it. And that's really hard for us because we have so much. So the more you can give us, the more information you can give us at the start, the easier that is for everyone to start filtering through, will that work for us, won't it work? Do we have something like that in development already? Is this a complete white space that we've been calling out for? So this is the team in the UK. Super happy they're on board. We're continuing to build out, so watch this space as they continue to hire.
And just give us a bit of an overview of the commissioning process. You know, who's got the ultimate sign-off? How often are you guys meeting? How many commissioning rounds do you think you might have, like in a year, that type of thing?
So going back to your question of why we're unique, I think in the SVOD world is starting from the beginning. We're quite unique because we develop. So we're probably more traditional in that sense. We don't go straight to series. What we want to do is take time and really invest up front in the development process so we can really work together with you quite creatively hands-on to shape this to be the ultimate Amazon show. And I'm aware it's really hard for us even right now to vocalize exactly what that is, and it's not till you start to get into the nitty-gritty of some of these shows that you start to pull out those threads. So if you go back a step, what first happens is we'd say to you, this is a great idea. We want to put this into development. And on the scripted side, we'd often say, let's develop a Bible, episodic arcs, and a couple of episodes. And then on the non-scripted side, it could be a variety of things depending on the shape when it gets to us. We might ask you to do sizzles, we might ask you to invest in casting, we might ask you to invest in quite detailed arcs, but we'd go through that with you. And once we work with you hand in hand to get to the point we think that's ready for green light, it's actually quite simple. We meet monthly. I meet weekly with my team to talk through the shows that are coming up. Then officially every month we meet. It's myself, our finance team in the UK, and Jay Marine, who runs Prime Video, and we sit in a room and we decide, are these the shows that are going to be those few originals that we're going to really put the spotlight on for our audiences in the UK. So it's a very simple process. As I said, we are very focused. We're not doing a lot. So I think when we are putting shows into development, we really want to make sure they've got quite a clear path to get through.
So it's like a quality rather than quantity.
Absolutely. And I think the challenge we have is because we're not doing a lot, even some of the most fantastic shows that we work on that we wish we could do, for certain reasons, just might not work for us. But it's a very easy and transparent process, I would say, to get through to us and then through the development process.
Simple, everybody. It's going to be simples, as they say. And do you want to also just outline us a bit about who's your team across Europe as
Absolutely.
well?
So the team in Europe we're still building. I think we have a slide coming up. So here we have our Italian non-scripted team building, Germany, France and Spain. So these are the guys that you need to speak to for their relevant genres and territories. We're still recruiting in Spain and Italy on the scripted front. So that's me. So that's just georgia.brown at amazonstudios.com. So anything there, ping my way. And as I said, this is just the beginnings of those creative teams. We are going to start building out. We'll start to build up the teams as we start to invest in more programming. But these are the faces that you need to speak to.
Fantastic. Now, I'm just conscious of time because, believe it or not, there's so much to sort of get through. So I'm going to fire some kind of snappy questions and we'll just sort of... Are you looking for established A-list talent or are you looking for fresh faces and genuine sort of unknown voices?
Both is the honest answer to that. We don't need shows to come packaged when they come to that, so don't feel like you have to bring things to us with big talent or directors. Every show, as I said, does something different for us. So we love working with the big established voices. Lots of the shows we're talking about today, you guys will have heard of them and seen them before. But we also, now we have the execs coming on board, have a fantastic slate of shows coming through with really, I think, relatively unknown producers, writers, directors, creators, which we're really excited about. And I think we'll talk a bit later about some of the schemes we're investing in to try and find some of that new talent, because I think that's the race we're all in, to discover who those new people are and give them a forum and a room to be viewed.
Well, let's move forward now to looking at scripted. And for you guys, what do you think potential global hits look like? What are you looking for?
If I knew that. It's really difficult to say what I think a global hit is. I think what I will say to everyone in the room is, if you look at the shows that we are currently promoting, The Boys, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Good Omens, these are all shows that I think have a heartbeat in the local territory that they have originated in, but absolutely resonate globally in terms of their themes, the scale, how epic some of them are.
They begin with the local.
Absolutely, and that's really important to us. And another probably distinctive quality of working with Amazon, we're very much focused on local shows for local audiences. I always say this, I don't think it's possible to say to a writer, can you please just create a global hit? Who is that? I don't know who a global audience even is. They're so different for every show. So I think we all feel very confident that if you're rooting something in a very specific market and you have themes that resonate and that you can connect with an audience emotionally, then those shows tend to travel very well.
And you work with some quite, well-defined local talent, like, you're doing some interesting, so I think you've got stuff with Simon Pegg and
we do,
Frost.
Yes. Yeah. We recently announced, so on the UK side, as I said, there's so many different ways of working with us. On the original side, we've just done a deal with Simon and Nick for a show called Truth Seekers. which is a fantastic horror comedy. It's taking them back to their roots of, I suppose, what they're known for. This was pinged to us yesterday, actually. This is their first get-together as we start to go into the creative process of this show. It's going to be a lot of fun, but this is an interesting one. This is an Amazon original, but we just have UK and US rights. So, we're freeing them up to take the rest of those rights out to the market. So again, we're not this one-size-fits-all, we must gobble up everything. We're very conscious of what's the show, which audience do we have for that, and will it work for that audience? So Truth Seekers is going to be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to working on this one. In the UK, talking about global shows, The Power, of course, I can't not talk about on stage, is something we're all incredibly proud to be working on. We feel very privileged to be across this one. Coming out of Jane Featherstone and Sister Pictures. And for those of you who don't know, it's a great book. It's based on Naomi Alderman's bestseller of the same name, The Power. And it's a kind of slightly dystopian, futuristic world where young women develop the ability to control men through electrocution. So, God, wouldn't I love to develop that?
A lot of women nodding. A lot of women nodding in the audience.
I know. So, but this one, again, it's very much rooted in the UK because of Naomi and the way she's put the creative together. But, what we're doing is pulling people like Reed Morano, who obviously you all know from directing Handmaids. So some very international elements that I think can give this scale and lift. And I'm pretty sure this will go, number one in every territory.
No doubt, no doubt. And just talk to us a little bit about, because I think people in the room will be interested about how your kind of co-production works.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, co-production is super important to us. We're continuing to invest very heavily in co-production. The latest one we've announced is Small Axe, as I said, which is a US co-production with the BBC. It is a six-parter from Steve McQueen looking at the West Indian community when they came over in the 60s, 70s and 80s, and some incredibly poignant and very personal stories that we're telling on screen. And I think something that we're very proud of, Lydia and myself, with this show is not only are we co-producing this, but we're also helping to invest in a big diversity scheme. So I think, as we all know here, one of the big issues we're facing, particularly in the BAME community, is getting people up to that kind of head of department level. So here we're funding 5 people who are moving into DOP roles. And we're also helping fund a scheme on this show where we're helping people from a more working class background get entry-level positions. Because again, we talk lots about diversity, but it's not just the colour of your skin or male, female, it's also where have you come from, and people need that break into the industry. So we're really proud to be working on that with the BBC.
And you've also just been very involved in the women's writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just revealed earlier on Emma Moran, who was the finalist of the 1,000 Films Women Writers Competition, which was with Sally Woodward Gentle. So again, we like to invest, and we'll talk a bit about our own schemes that we're doing to find and unearth new talent, but we also love to collaborate on any way possible to bring new voices to the market.
Now let's move on to non-scripted, because I think there'll be a lot of interest in that in the room. Now, you're looking to commission both the big global hits, but you're obviously very, very, very into the local. What are you looking for in your brilliant non-scripted show?
Well, look, we can't talk about non-scripted without mentioning the Grand Tour, because that's where this all began. And I think, the Grand Tour, it goes without saying, was just a supersized hit for us around the world. But we have to diversify, and we have to look at what's next. And I think it's true to say, when I started this job, that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we've faced is, I think it's quite obvious to people what a scripted show on an SVOD service looks like, how it needs to feel, the quality we need to see. But actually in unscripted, the broadcasters are doing such an incredible job of producing these big juggernaut hits. The question is, well, what sat behind a paywall works in the non-scripted space? And lucky for me, I've hired Dan, and that's his job to figure out. But, we've already made great waves in this. So the first set of shows that we've looked at revolve around sport, and that's really important for us. We've tapped into an audience there who are fanatical, who are hungry for more. And I think in the sporting space, what we've realised is we can offer people a really interesting, exclusive inside glimpse to some of these worlds that maybe they weren't getting before. And that started with All or Nothing, Manchester City, which was a huge hit for us last summer. We knew it would be big, but I think it surpassed even our expectations of how big that went globally. And the big feedback from the customer was, of course, it was that inside access that they'd never seen before. So following on from that, we kind of took that model and thought, how can we look at that in other territories? And the next one that we'll launch is Sergio Ramos on the 13th of September. And I think we have an exclusive clip to show you today.
Clip for you here.
I'm so excited about this one. So it launches on the 13th, and it really is like, for any football fans here, it is warts and all. I mean, there's a lot in here, which I'm sure is quite painful for him to watch, but it's an incredible look at a year in the life of Sergio and his family. And then moving on from that, I think a show that's really surprised people, it's interesting when I get feedback when I'm at festivals like this, was the launch of Back of the Net, which was our weekly football entertainment show that we launched a couple of weeks ago to kind of coincide with us getting the Premier League football rights in December. And this one's been really good fun for us to work on because, again, it's kind of broken the mould of we have to have shows that are binge release. We have to have shows that you can watch in one night. Well, this is weekly and it's going to be going out over the course of the Premier League. It's a very different format. It's quick turnaround. We film on a Monday. You're all welcome to come and watch. It goes out on the Tuesday. So it's a huge amount of tech and innovation has gone into putting this model on screen. So it's been a lot of fun to work on it. And I think we actually might have a clip of this one as well for those who haven't seen it yet. Peter, who through him we've had again this incredible access. I don't know if anyone's watched the first episode, but he interviews Steven Gerrard, and it really threw all of us because he gave so much away because of course he's talking to a mate and
that intimacy,
you know, so it really gives that spin on that proper inside access that we're managing to get with some of these shows.
And obviously you're non-sport, you've been doing a lot with the Grand Tour, and you've been doing quite a lot of work with talent like James May and
Yeah, so we announced a while ago that we were doing our first deal with James on a travelogue. So James came to our office and obviously was wonderful and said, I want to do a travelogue, but I do not want to sit on a train looking out a window with a voiceover. And we went, okay. So he wanted to put his own spin on it, and so did we. And I think another misconception, you know, we will look at the genres like a travelogue, like cookery. We'd look at all of these, but they've got to have a spin. They've got to have something that an audience hasn't really seen before. So we sent James off to Japan. This was the first show that Dan had to come in and exec. I think day one he was flown off to Japan with James. And actually the results are fantastic. We can't wait to launch this one. It's just so much fun. He's a real joy to work with.
I think we've got
we should
I
take
think
a
we've
look.
got a little clip of this.
And again, this one's so much fun because, you know, one of the things James and Plum, who made the show with him, were very keen to do was kind of break that fourth wall. So the crew really become part of the team and they interact a lot throughout the journey. So it's an absolute hoot, this one. I can't wait for it to launch.
And I think you've got some news about some other projects that you're going to be working on.
We do. So as well as working with James, we've done a deal with Richard Hammond and with Tori Bellucci from Mythbusters, who came to us and said, we want to reinvent pop science. Like, this is a genre that needs to be taken on and really reinvented, given scale, giving a real epic quality, and they've absolutely come to the table. So we're doing a 6-part show with them. Currently untitled, so this is very new. We'll have more news soon. We're going to cast them away on a desert island, and they're going to have to survive for a few weeks, and using their absolute engineering and pop science prowess, fulfill their time getting through things like boredom, starvation, survival. It's the thing that they've come up with is absolutely epic. I'm terrified for health and safety on this one. It's everything you would expect it to be from Richard and Tori. They're a fantastic partnership. So watch this space for more information on that.
Brilliant. Now, I'm just really, the time is just whizzed by and we've got a few questions that have come in. But before that, just, you know, you've started this really, really big role. It's a hugely exciting time for Amazon Studios. You're your big new entrance, your potential huge disruptor. You've got a big vision and deep pockets. But in terms of in 5 years' time, what do you want people to be saying about you and your team and what you've achieved? What do you want your sort of shape to look like?
What I really would love is to have people, particularly in this room, saying, oh my goodness, we've just logged on and we've seen your next Spanish original, El Cid or La Templanza, and they're exploring some of these incredible worlds that we're bringing to them and not just focused on their own territories. Because I think that, again, is the joy of some of this disruption, is we're now bringing the globe to your sofa. You can sit there and you can indulge in every different culture, language, different voices, and that for me is just one of the absolute privileges of this job. So I hope fast forward 5 years, people are really making the most of that technology and the world outside that they can start looking in on.
Fantastic. Now we've got time for a question. Actually, this is a Very, very good question. And it's something that did actually cross my mind. So thank you, whoever sent this in, because you actually read my mind. So the promo looks great. But from the on-screen faces you featured, it's very male, very sports, cars, Grand Tour, Top Gear. And is this a demographic you're favouring? And where are the women? And I'd like you to answer this question with the on-screen, but also the off-screen, because in the last year there's been a big conversation about, the diversity riders, behind the scenes talent, what are you doing in terms of female directors, writers? I think you're doing some work with writers. You've got a Writer Slam project. Just talk us through a bit of that in the last few minutes.
And if you were sat in the green room with us before, we were having a great debate about this. So this is really important to us. Diversity on screen, whether that's male, female, BAME, is hugely important to the DNA of our studios and how we're setting up. So in the sense of a lot of this looking quite male skewed, lots of these shows are very male skewed, but I think it would surprise you. If you look at All or Nothing, Manchester City, that was very female skewed actually. Lots of females came to that story because again, if you go beyond the football and assuming that's a male world, actually lots of the female audience just adored how much we emotionally engage with those players. And I think it will be true of Sergio. I'm expecting that to skew very female. Also, he's gorgeous, which helps. So although I think lots of it looks very male skewed, a huge amount of women come to our service. But that is something we're hugely conscious of. It's
you're not defensive about it. You are.
No, not at all. And it's everyone knows. I think new tech and new technological advances are often taken up by the early adopters, and they're quite often young males, and that's true of every territory we seem to go into. So of course we need to program for them. But as I said, all of our shows, whether they have female talent at the lead or they have male talent, tend to skew quite evenly.
And are you looking at behind the scenes in terms of cast?
Absolutely.
And crew as well, crew?
Yeah, and we should talk about diversity because actually I want to talk about our Writers' Slam.
Just very quick, we've only got a couple of minutes.
Very quickly, so it's... I say a lot, people come to things like this and talk about diversity and it's important, but really, like I say, we're making this part of our DNA from day one, which is a luxury we have setting up, later than the others, I suppose. But one of the things we were really keen to do is unearth these new voices and start to give them an opportunity to come through because it's so difficult, we've talked about it, to get that first break. So we actually connected with a company called Triforce, who are a diversity and inclusivity organisation helping connect people like us to the newer talent. And we ran a fantastic writers' competition. And really the only remit was we want people to supply us with the first 15 pages of a script about absolutely anything that you don't think is currently represented on screen. And we had the most incredible uptake. I think we had over 1,000 applicants come in. Lydia and myself have whittled that down to 20, down to 5. And I'm actually going to tell you now who the 5 finalists are because we're hugely excited about this. And I think for any scripted people in the room, these are definitely writers that you need to watch. So we are working with Celia Morgan, and the show is called Sandra's Girls. We're working with Grace Link on a show called Crack of Dawn. Amari McCarthy, an incredible script called Once Upon a Time in Handsworth. Mikey Jackson for 7 Magpies, and Rashida Sakari for The 4. So these are the 5 finalists of our competition. We have the finals on the 6th of September where we'll find out who our winner is, and that person will get a fully paid development. They'll work with Lydia for the next 6 months to build up that kind of green light material for us. So again, diversity and kind of empowering those younger voices, female, male, every different ethnicity is hugely important.
And are you doing that on an annual basis? Is that going to be a regular thing?
It will definitely be regular. The next phase is actually not in the UK, it's rolling out across Europe. So that's the next big thing for us. We'll be moving that across to Europe.
Now, I've just been told rather excitingly that we can squeeze another question which is... Right, most of your drama shows are plush, high concept, alternative worlds or period. Would there ever be a place for a quieter, character-led, British feelings-based show?
Absolutely. I mean, the show we talk about endlessly is transparent, right? And that definitely wasn't any of those. So that's our heritage. We absolutely are looking for all of those ideas, all those spaces. Lydia's just started out, as we all know, takes a long time to develop drama and give those shows a room to breathe. But we're really open to anything. Don't think just because we're an SVOD, it has to cost you 30 million an episode. It really doesn't. It can be... Our audience doesn't sit there and think, how much did this cost? What they're connecting with is a character and a world and a voice, and that's what's important to us.
And just on that, I mean, with some of the stuff you've showcased, and I know there's lots of other stuff in the pipeline, What's your message to the smaller independent production company that's not based in a metropolitan city, that doesn't have that access either to those kind of A-list stars or those known faces? What chance do they have pitching to you and your team?
A lot, and it's frustrating. I can't talk about some of the next slate that we're going to be talking about, but a lot of that is producers you probably won't have heard of, on-screen talent you probably haven't seen before, and that's really important for us. So please, if you're sat here thinking, I don't have access to Jeremy Clarkson, Amazon will never buy from me, that's just not the case. You know, we're really open to new people, new ideas, so it's really just about that creative idea, and do we think there's a big audience for that idea? Talent is slightly secondary to that.
Yeah. Well, Georgia, thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak to us today. It's been really fascinating. I know this is your really big kind of first conversation that you've had, and I think we've all found it really useful. Thanks for all the practical advice. And Lydia and Dan are here.
Yep,
and
here.
Get pitching, everybody. Thank you very much
Thank
to
you
you guys,
so
and
much.
thank you very much to Georgia.
Thank you so much.